staan? U kunt wel plaatsnemen.
Hereby, I open this academic ceremony in which Zhewen Ren will defend the academic thesis Socioeconomic Determinants and Cardiometabolic Consequences of Non-Alcoholic Fatty Liver Disease. May I invite you to present a summary of your study and the conclusions of your thesis.
Thank you for the prorector. So, dear prorectors, highly esteemed opponents, my supervisors, colleagues and friends, and online viewers, thank you for being here today. In the upcoming 15 minutes, I will present the summary of my thesis entitled Socioeconomic Determinants and the Cardiometabolic Consequences of Non-Alcoholic Fatty Liver Disease. Non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, abbreviated as NAFLD, is now highly prevalent worldwide, with an estimated prevalence of more than 30%. NAFLD has several phases of progression. The first stage of NAFLD is simple hepatic steatosis. In this stage, the fat starts to accumulate in more than 5% of the liver cells, but there is no serious liver injury or inflammation. There are usually no symptoms at this stage. Some people may be unaware that they have fatty liver. However, 80 to 90% of the NAFLD patients will just stay at this stage and will never develop any further. However, still 20% of the steatosis patients will finally progress into non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, abbreviated as NASH. NASH is a more serious stage. In this stage, besides the lipid accumulation, there is also inflammation, and the liver cells start to get damaged. The persistent inflammation can cause the scarring of the liver, and about 10% to 20% NASH patients will then progress into the stage of fibrosis. In the stage of fibrosis, the liver can still function well. There is persistent scar in the liver or in the blood vessels around the liver. However, if over time, the scar tissues start to replace a lot of normal liver tissues, the liver function will be affected. And 5 to 10% of the fibrosis patients will develop into the most serious stage, cirrhosis. In the stage of cirrhosis, the liver stops functioning, starts working properly, and the symptoms start to appear, like the yellowing of the skin and whitening of the eyes. If the cirrhosis is not halted, it will eventually lead to liver cancer or liver failure. Since NAFLD is such a serious problem, we would like to find out what causes NAFLD in order to take effective preventive measures. Socioeconomic position may be such a cause. Socioeconomic position is used to measure somebody's social class position. It includes a lot of indicators. Among them, education, income, and occupational status are the most frequently used. Due to the lack of money, less access to healthy food or sports facilities, and some other reasons, individuals with low socioeconomic position usually have unhealthy lifestyles, while simultaneously, unhealthy lifestyles can contribute to the development of NAFLD. Therefore, Individuals with low socioeconomic position are also expected to have increased risk of developing NAFLD. As NAFLD is the liver expression of metabolic syndrome, so it can also lead to some other metabolic diseases. For example, NAFLD patients usually have a lot of fat in their blood, while a high level of blood lipids is a well-known risk factor for cardiovascular disease. So NAFLD patients may also have the increased risk of developing cardiovascular diseases. Based on above introduction, the first objective of this thesis was to examine the association between socioeconomic position and NAFLD, and to study to what extent this association can be explained by some traditional lifestyle factors, including the dietary intake of some nutrients and the physical activity level. Moreover, we would like to know whether the association between the socioeconomic position and NAFLD was of causal nature. We used the data from the Maastricht study to examine the association between education and NAFLD. The Maastricht study is a population-based cohort study with oversampling of type 2 diabetes patients in southern Limburg. Now it recruits almost 9,200 individuals. We found that compared with individuals with high education, individuals with low education has an almost 44% higher NAFLD risk. And the effect of education on NAFLD was through the following factors. The first is through the physical activity level. Compared with high education group, low education group has decreased physical activity level, and consequently increasing their NAFLD risk. This pathway explains about 9% of the effect of education on NAFLD. The second factor is sugar-sweetened beverage. Individuals with low education tend to consume more fructose from sugar-sweetened beverage, and then increase their NAFLD risk. This pathway explains about 80% of the association. However, you may find that these two pathways together can only explain about 17% of the effect of education on NAFLD, which means there is still a large proportion that can be explained by other factors, like air pollution and endocrine disruptors. But this still needs further validation. Since this is an observational research, we would like to use another epidemiological method to further examine this question. The method we used is called Mendelian randomization study. I will explain the idea of this method in detail. When people are born, some of them may have DNA that make them have more years of schooling, while for the others, they may have the DNA that make them have less years of schooling. These two situations can happen with the same chance. So this process is just like a random lottery when you get at birth. And this process will not be affected by the other factors that may also have an impact on NAFLD risk. By studying the DNA of large groups of people, we can get clues about whether lower educational level is really causing NAFLD. The results demonstrated that the DNA-related education was negatively associated with NAFLD risk. An individual who has 4 fewer years of schooling would have an about 64% higher NAFLD risk. The second objective of this thesis was to study the association between NAFLD and cardiovascular disease. And also, we would like to know what is the exact role of blood lipids in this association. Similarly, we would like to examine whether NAFLD can play a causal role in the pathogenesis of cardiovascular disease. Since we think blood lipids is very important in the association between NAFLD and cardiovascular disease, we would like to first study the association between NAFLD and blood lipids. The data was also derived from the Maastricht study. And we found that for individuals without NAFLD and without any DNA defect in the removal of blood lipids, their blood lipid levels were normal. For individuals with either the DNA defect in cleaning of the lipids or NAFLD, their blood lipid levels increased slightly. However, for individuals with both NAFLD and DNA defect in the removal of blood lipids, their blood lipid levels increased substantially. Now we find a strong relationship between NAFLD and blood lipids. We would like to further examine the association between NAFLD and cardiovascular disease. We used the method of manual randomization analysis again. And the results showed that the DNA-related NAFLD was positively associated with the risk of developing cardiovascular disease. NAFLD patients had an about 16% higher risk of developing cardiovascular disease compared with non-patients. To sum up, in this thesis, we found that individuals with low socioeconomic position had increased risk of developing NAFLD. And the effect of socioeconomic position on NAFLD was partly through affecting some lifestyle factors, like physical activity level or the consumption of sugar-sweetened beverage. The use of another epidemiological method further consolidated these findings. We also found that NAFLD patients would have would have a lot of fat in their blood, as the blood lipids is a risk factor for developing cardiovascular disease. NAFLD patients would also have increased risk of developing cardiovascular disease. I have some take-home messages from this thesis. The first is that the societal measures targeted at low socioeconomic position should be taken together by the government, the individuals themselves, as well as the manufacturers. Among these three stakeholders, the government should take the lead. They are supposed to take the measures like redesigning the living environment of the low socioeconomic community in order to let the low socioeconomic group have more access to healthy food. Because now some studies have proved that for low socioeconomic group, they will usually have more access to fast food restaurants. The government can also provide some public sports facilities to the low socioeconomic group to increase their walkability, and consequently, their physical activity level will also increase. They can also release some policies to urge the manufacturers indicating the nutritional grade score on the food packages. The second is that the treatment of NAFLD may help reduce blood lipid levels and consequently reducing cardiovascular disease risk. The lifestyle interventions can be a very effective measure for the treatment of NAFLD. Measures like drinking less sugar-sweetened beverage and doing more exercise can all be beneficial. Thank you for your attention. Now I will give the word back to the prorector.
Thank you very much for your very clear presentation. We will now start with the opposition, and the opposition will be opened by the chair of the assessment committee, Professor Kroon, Professor of Vascular Medicine at Maastricht University Medical Center.
Dear candidate, with great pleasure I read your manuscript, and it gained a lot of information for me which I can use in my daily practice. I work a lot with patients with hypertension and hypercholesterolemia, and I see a lot of patients with NAFLD. So I was very interested in this booklet. I want to congratulate you with this great effort, and in my congratulations, I want to include your promotion team. I start this discussion with you off on chapter 2. In chapter 2, you identify low socioeconomic position and NFLD, and that they are associated, and you indicate, as nicely shown in your presentation, that socioeconomic status is mediated by an unhealthy lifestyle, like low physical activity and high fructose intake, especially in sugar-sweetened beverages. You also studied a lot of other factors in this chapter, and well, I've gone through table 1 on page 29 to 30, and there are a lot of factors. But in the end, you conclude, as nicely shown in figure 1 of this on page 33, that physical activity, especially moderate to vigorous physical activity, alcohol intake, dietary fibers, and fructose are determinants driving the association between intrahepatic lipid and physical activity and fructose in beverages in NFLD. I have been ruminating these data. I didn't understand them. Since I see a lot of patients from higher socioeconomic status with the same problem. So I came up with maybe a stupid idea, and I want to discuss that with you. Could it be that physical activity and carbohydrate intake are more important than socioeconomic status? So that these are the driving factors for the development of NFLD, since patients with a higher socioeconomic status also can take a lot of prepared foods containing a lot of carbohydrates and less proteins. And since you haven't looked into carbohydrates into your booklet, I think that may be a thought worthwhile thinking of. What are your thoughts on my idea that not socioeconomic status, but carbohydrate intake and physical activity are more important than socioeconomic status?
The highly esteemed opponents, thank you very much for your positive remarks and your question. For this question, my opinion is that the socioeconomic position is actually a very complex indicator. It is not only associated with, for example, the money you earn and the knowledge you learn, but also associated with your personal traits and some psychological factors. As you mentioned just now, that some individuals with high socioeconomic position may also have some unhealthy lifestyles like the high intake of carbohydrates. I think they are aware that this is unbeneficial to their health. But there is some internal force, I mean, some force like the self-control, self-regulation. For them, for this kind of people, the force of this is not enough to motivate them to change their behaviors. That's why they will also consume more carbohydrate. And maybe they will also do not do enough exercise. So in the future, I think the psychological factors is also needed to take into account in the mediation analysis between socioeconomic position and the development of some diseases. But
do I understand that you agree that carbohydrate intake is more important and that mental status or the way to reduce carbohydrate intake isn't associated with socioeconomic status?
Do you mean that reducing the carbohydrate, or you mean that reducing carbohydrate is not associated with socioeconomic?
Yeah, I think it is.
I think it is still with socioeconomic position, because socioeconomic position is the root cause, as I mentioned just now. It is associated with our both the physical activity level and dietary intake, while you know that for some people with mental illness, they may also have some habits like the binge drinking or the emotional eating. So it's still with the socioeconomic position because it is also the root causes for some psychological factors.
Okay, well, we have to study further on socioeconomic status, I think, and factors you mentioned a moment ago. Then I want to go to proposition 6. If one of your parents can read aloud proposition 6.
Non-alcoholic fatty liver disease may potentially be included in cardiovascular risk assessment strategies.
Okay, thank you. So it may potentially be included. Well, that's of course a very soft statement, but I think that you mean that you want to include NFLD in the assessment of cardiovascular risk. And I assume you indicate that you want to include it in something like a score table we use in the Netherlands, in Europe. And I was wondering how you wanted to do that, since, well, you indeed say that NFLD has an association with cardiovascular risk of the same magnitude as type 2 diabetes. So my question is, if you were allowed to include one of the factors you mentioned in your thesis into the score table, and I mentioned 3 of them: socioeconomic status, intrahepatic lipid, or NFLD status. Which of these 3 would you include in a score table, and why? So you are allowed to make a new score table, and you are to include new data in it. Which one would you choose?
For this question, I think my answer composes of 2 parts. The first is that whether NFLD should really be included in the assessment. Because, I mentioned in my review that the association between NFLD and cardiovascular disease may be similar in the magnitude of the association between type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular disease. While I think the score table you mentioned just now for type 2 diabetes patients, this is not enough to use these traditional estimators in the cardiovascular disease risk estimation of type 2 diabetes patients. Because for type 2 diabetes patients, they automatically have the moderate to very high risk of developing cardiovascular disease. So in this case, maybe intrahepatic content should be included because it's very important. The individuals with high risk, with high intrahepatic content may automatically classified into the individuals with high risk of developing cardiovascular disease. But on the other hand, because in my thesis, I also mentioned that serum lipids, it play a very important role in the NAFLD and cardiovascular disease. While for the score table, the serum lipids has already been included in it. So maybe it's enough.
Okay, well, I think we agree on this issue. I give the word back to, I thank you for your answers and give the word back to the pro-rector.
Thank you, Professor Kroon. The opposition will be continued by Professor Blaak, Professor of Human Biology at Maastricht University.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Pro-Rector. Dear candidate, at first also congratulations on this very nice thesis on a very relevant topic of NFLD. It contains a nice set of studies, mainly focused on data analysis in the Maastricht study. And I think it's very relevant because it's very important that we obtain more information on socioeconomic determinants and status, since looking at lifestyle interventions this may be a group that needs a change in lifestyle most, but in which adherence to intervention is lowest. But we may discuss that later on. I would like to start the discussion with Chapter 2. And perhaps first a few brief questions. You use also looking at the lifestyle factors and socioeconomic position data of the Maastricht study. My first question is, to what extent the Maastricht study really reflects the general population with respect to distribution of socioeconomic position? Since it's a cohort enriched in pre-diabetes and diabetes, and also there may be some selection bias of participants to this study versus others. Can you briefly comment on that?
The highly esteemed components, thank you for your kind words and your questions. My answer for this question is that the Maastricht study, of course, cannot represent the general population, because it is a cohort study with the oversampling of type 2 diabetes patients. The prevalence in the Maastricht study for type 2 diabetes is almost 22%. So I think for the distribution of the socioeconomic position, of course, in Maastricht study, I think there will be more people with lower socioeconomic position than the general population. But actually, this will not have much more effect on our results because it's a non-differential selection, which means that the individuals with type 2 diabetes or without type 2 diabetes, I think they have their association between the exposure and outcome actually are the same. And for the association between lifestyle factors and some disease outcomes, this association will be different from the association in general population, because as Maastricht study is a cohort study with sampling of type 2 diabetes, with oversampling of type 2 diabetes patients. So the patients, I think they will also have some other metabolic diseases. There maybe after they were included in the Maastricht study, they will change their lifestyle factors. They will live more healthy. Then the association between the lifestyle factors and the health outcome will be underestimated.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, so there may be some differences with the general population, and we may have to take that into account.
Yeah.
But I would like to proceed to another topic. Looking at table. Let me see, table 1 in chapter 2. You look also at the effects of fructose intake, and specifically you split up fructose intake from sugar-sweetened beverages and from fruit juice. I assume you did that in before, so can you motivate why you split up those two food products?
Yeah. Because we think, as we know that fructose can come from different kinds of the dietary intake. For the fructose from the sugar-sweetened beverage, if they have more fructose from sugar-sweetened beverage, it means this kind of people, they may live more unhealthy, because we know that sugar-sweetened beverage is not a healthy beverage. But
I fully agree with you. But can you speculate a little bit on the underlying mechanisms for that? Why fructose from sugar-sweetened beverages would be more hazardous than fructose from fruit juice? Because there's been a lot of discussion, of course, on that.
Well, in my opinion, it is something related with the confounders. Maybe for individuals who consume more sugar-sweetened beverage, they will also have lower intake of the healthy food like the vegetables, and also some proteins, dietary fibers, and this may be the confounder. But for the individuals consume...
But you had all those data in your data set. Did you have a look at that?
We didn't take a look at that data.
No.
No.
No, I was just wondering, do you expect that it's a specific effect of the food matrix, or is it just a matter of energy intake? When you have an increased intake of sugar-sweetened beverages, that may just increase your overall energy intake.
I think it's not associated with total energy intake because for all of the nutrient intakes we presented in the table, it has been adjusted by the residue method with the total energy intake.
Okay, yeah, I saw that, and that's very clear. But I'm just wondering, did you also adjust for body mass index? Because it could be the case that they overconsumed a lot of sugar-sweetened beverages, then developed obesity, and that the differentiating effect of energy intake may not be that obvious anymore. So did you adjust your analysis for body mass index, is the question.
No, we didn't adjust for body mass index, because body mass index, because we actually perform the mediation analysis. So it contains two parts. The first is association between the exposure, I mean the socioeconomic position, and mediators, lifestyle factors. And the second part is the association between the lifestyle factors and the intrahaplipid content. Then I think the question then comes how to place body mass index. Maybe in the first part, it should not be a confounder. We should not adjust it. Maybe it's also will be the downstream consequences of the unhealthy lifestyle factors. But in the second part, the answer is different. Maybe we should adjust it, but I'm not sure.
But what is the explanation for the mediating effect of fructose in sugar-sweetened beverages, in your view? The explanation for it.
Sorry, can you repeat?
How does the intake of fructose in sugar-sweetened beverages mediate the relationship between socioeconomic position and NAFLD or liver fat?
How to explain the mediation?
How to explain it, yeah.
Yeah, the mediation effect means that in this thesis, it means for individuals with lower socioeconomic position, they will have higher chance to consuming more sugar-sweetened beverage. So their fructose intake will become higher, and the fructose will be transformed into the fat through de novo lipogenesis in the liver, and then they will have higher intrahepatic content.
So it's just that they consume a higher amount of sugar-sweetened beverages?
Sorry?
It's just that people with lower socioeconomic position consume a higher amount of sugar-sweetened beverages?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, that's very clear. I'm just wondering, because you indicate also in the food frequency questionnaire you looked at sugar-sweetened beverages, but it may not have been completely validated. I was just wondering, could you differentiate between sugar-sweetened beverages and beverages sweetened by artificial sweeteners?
In this thesis, we didn't take the beverage containing the artificial sweeteners into account. But from what I know, I think this is a very complex question because for the artificial sweeteners, until now, the studies can't prove that it has significant effect on our health or have a beneficial effect. And I think the metabolic pathways of artificial sweeteners is quite different from the natural sugar. So this still needs some further research.
Okay, may I still ask a lot? No? Oh. Thank you very much for your answers. I give the word back to the pro-rector.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but we have to go to the next opponent, who is present online. It's Dr. Castro Cabezas. He is a doctor of internal medicine at Franciscus Gasthuis in Rotterdam and also associate professor at the Erasmus Medical Center. Please.
I would like to congratulate you. First of all, congratulations with a very interesting and important topic. And I would also like to congratulate your supervising team and your family. So without further ado, let's go to the questions. I would like to talk to you about something you mentioned in page 13 of your thesis, in which you refer to the PNPLA3 gene, clearly explaining that it is a gene that is associated with decreased lipidation of VLDL. Now, usually, NAFLD or MASLD, as it is called nowadays, is very closely associated to high triglycerides, low HDL cholesterol. So, what are your thoughts about the mechanism involved in the relationship between PNPLA3 and the expression of NAFLD?
Sorry, if I understand correct, do you mean that the association of PNPLA3 and in the with the development of NAFLD?
Yes, because if NAFLD, if the PNPLA3 decreases lipidation of VLDL, you would expect increased concentrations of triglycerides in the liver, but lower secretion of VLDL particles. So potentially lower triglycerides in the circulation. And that's not what we usually see in clinical practice.
If from what I know...
So
you can continue.
Let me put it otherwise. How can increased lipids in the liver because of carriage of PNPLA3 be associated to high triglycerides in the circulation?
That's because of the PNPLA3 gene. It can decrease the secretion of the triglyceride VLDL particles, and then more fat, they cannot be secreted and will be accumulated in liver. And
but then you would expect lower triglycerides in the circulation.
And on the other hand, the serum lipids will be decreased because of the decreased secretion of the triglyceride VLDL particles.
But isn't it so that usually MASLD is connected to higher triglycerides in the circulation?
Do you mean that MASLD is associated with higher triglycerides in circulation?
Yes. So how can this be reconciled with accumulation of triglycerides due to decreased lipidation of VLDL? Probably because there is also, as you describe in your thesis, a problem in the clearance of triglycerides in some patients, isn't it? And this makes me go to chapter 4, in which you described the polygenic risk score in your Mendelian randomization studies and genetic studies, and you selected 9 SNPs in that study, isn't it?
Yes. So,
yeah. And the thing that I wanted to ask you is, why didn't you include the very well-known ApoC2, ApoC3, and ApoA5 genes that are so closely connected to triglyceride clearance?
For this question, to be honest, the genes you mentioned, I'm not so familiar with their function. But you mentioned that it is associated with VLDL clearance. I think it is also, it is because of the genes we selected from previous published GWAS, and then we searched the functions of these genes one by one from the PubMed and the gene cards, and then we include genes with evidence only showing that it is associated with VLDL clearance. I mean, not with any other functions like the VLDL production or something else, but the genes you mentioned just now, it's not included in that GWAS.
So the results of that chapter are very much influenced by the selection of the genes that you have made.
To really be affected by the GWAS we cited. Because of the Maastricht study, it consists of the population, mostly of the Caucasian ancestry. It's about 99% of the European ancestry. And for the GWAS we cited, it's almost 70% of the population are also of the European ancestry. So the effect will not be that much.
Well, I do not fully agree with what you say, because I think that if you would have included other genes in this analysis, perhaps the results would have been different. Especially having ApoC2 and ApoC3 in the algorithm might have changed some things.
I think
a very short
right.
question, if I may.
Yeah, it's time for a short question.
So, if I was also very much interested in chapter 5, did I understand correctly that in that chapter you suggest that there could be different types of NAFLD, those with increased VLDL secretion and those without increased secretion, but a problem in clearance?
Yes, because we think that for the NAFLD patients, if they are with the decreased VLDL production, they are not the real, we cannot say real, it's not the average phenotype of the NAFLD patients, because it's not obliged with the biological, it's not obliged with the metabolic pathways in biology.
I understand. I thank you very much for your answers. I would like to hand over to the prorector. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Castro Cabezas. The next opponent is Dr. Noordam. He's assistant professor at Leiden University Medical Center.
Thank you, and congratulations with your the completion of a very nice thesis. And I also would like to extend my congratulations to your supervision team. For my questions, I would like first to ask one of your paronyms to read proposition number 8. A very short one.
The triangulation approach strengthens causal inference.
Yeah, a very short one. And so about triangulation in etiological research, a lot of research and a lot of papers describe the concept of triangulation. Also have some different opinions about it. So when I was reading your thesis and your proposition, I was really interested to hear from you what you refer as triangulation to strengthen causal inference.
The esteemed opponent, thank you very much for your positive remarks and your questions. From my point of view, the triangulation means that you use different methods to study the same question, while the shortcoming or the bias caused by these methods cannot affect with each other. So it can complement with each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I totally agree. But triangulation also means try, so there are 3 of them. So what do you think are then the 3 different designs? As you said, they all have their shortcomings. They have different types of bias. But what are then the 3 main designs that complement the triangulation?
The first is observational research, which we know that is, of course, affected by the residue confounding. And the other is the genetic epidemiology, like the manual randomization. It can it can, from some point, to reduce the bias. But of course, we cannot 100% to see that manual randomization is the results of the manual randomization is 100% that's true. It just helps to minimize the bias. And for the third one, to be honest, I'm not so familiar, but I speculate it's something just like the interaction between the traditional epidemiology and the genetic epidemiology. That's my speculation.
About the third one. Well, I'm not really sure whether I totally agree with you on the third one. Usually it's seen as the intervention studies that are seen as the third, and those together are then referred as the triangulation in etiological research. So when having that concept in my mind, I was also wondering how do I see your thesis, and especially the results that you describe in chapter number 3, where you associate education with NAFLD and liver fat. So how should I triangulate that concept? Because you say that people with low education, they have a higher risk of NAFLD. But that was only based on the Mendelian randomization analysis. So how should I triangulate that finding?
For this question, I think the manual randomization is the only method to perform the randomization, because I think in reality, it's impossible to assign individuals to the low education group or the high education group. So it may be the highest level of evidence until now.
So what you mean is that basically the things that you describe in your thesis cannot be complemented by triangulation. Is that what I understand?
Yeah, I have to admit that in my thesis, I didn't use any method of the interventional studies.
No, I completely agree. So I was also teasing you a little bit. But then I shouldn't interpret your results as that we have to educate people to a higher level of education to prevent NAFLD. Is that what you say?
Yeah. Increasing people's education is very important, but it doesn't mean that you just educate them more to let them have more years of schooling. As I mentioned just now, education is a very complete indicator. It is associated with some other socioeconomic factors like the income, occupation, and also with some other neighborhood communities factors. And most important is that associated with some psychological factors. This is very important for our change of the behavior.
So if I understand you correctly, then it would mean that it's not education per se which is causally associated with NAFLD or liver fat, but all the factors that are connected with education.
Yeah, it may be. So I think maybe in the future we'd better to perform some mediation, manual randomization analysis to extend or to examine whether the education can, through affecting some other factors like the psychological factors, then affect the NAFLD. But I think the limitation for this study is that sometimes we don't have such gene exposure data set. So maybe it's impossible to perform such study. But it's quite a good point. That's why we also use the GWAS data set of cognition and some other education-related traits, because we think they are closely related with education, and they can also prove their independent effect on the NAFLD risk.
Yeah, because you showed also, and that is, you completely go into the direction of my next question, so that's nice. And because you also showed in your chapter number 3 the association between higher level of math and the lower risk of NAFLD, and then I was thinking, okay, so there are apparently genes that are associated with the level of mathematics. So I would be very much happy to hear from you. What is your opinion about the validity of the instruments associated with these kind of traits that, yeah, I sometimes consider perhaps a little bit vague, but I'm happy to hear your opinion.
Yeah, because the first purpose we use the genes associated with math is that it is from the GWAS we cited. It is a very close trait. It is a trait very closely related with education. Our purpose is to, from another perspective, to prove that education is causally associated with NAFLD. But I think it is also associated with the essence of the math. Maybe for people, they have some, they have good grades in mathematical tests. They will also have some good performance in cognition, and maybe they also have some good. They are in better social contexts. For example, they can receive more training in math. That can prove that is associated with education from another side. For example, for a person whose parents also have higher education, they may receive the training of mathematical, to train their mathematical abilities from their childhood.
But that is then also, again, in the direction of more as an intervention, right? So then you propose that we have to train mathematics to prevent disease later on? Is that what you mean?
No, that's what I mean. What I mean that for the trait of mathematical ability, it can reflect your other socioeconomic factors.
Okay, no, I'm very happy with your answers, and I'm also very happy to hear from you that you understand the shortcomings of these instruments, and especially these kind of rather vague exposures. And I give the word back to the prorector. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Noordam. Then it's time for the last opponent. It's Dr. Meertens, Associate Professor of Health Promotion at Maastricht University.
Thank you. Also, my congratulations, dear candidate, for you and also for your supervisor team. I especially liked about your dissertation that you had such a variety of studies, and what you discuss is very relevant, and also that you spent some time really thinking about the consequences that has for practice. I also have several questions. And the first question is about chapter 2, the observational study, using the data of the Maastricht study. And there you find that the socioeconomic position is related to the amount of lipids stored in the liver. And secondly, you find that it's only partly explained by lifestyle factors. And what you did as lifestyle factors is, in short, physical activity and dietary intake. And where I was wondering about is, why did you ever think about also including sleep variables, like sleep duration or sleep quality, or proxies thereof, as a lifestyle variable, because that's also related to metabolic functioning. And a quick look at in data also show that it is related somehow to NAFLD, and sleep variables are often related. So I was wondering why you didn't take that into account.
The esteemed opponent, thank you very much for your positive remarks and your questions. The reasons we didn't take sleep into account is that sleep is not directly associated with increasing GI content. At least from the past studies, we didn't find any research can support this. We choose these factors because in the past studies, they have been proved to be closely related with the risk of NAFLD. And the second reason is that I think for the sleeping quality, it is also a healthy outcome. Maybe the lifestyle factors, for example, the consumption of some unhealthy food like the fast food, it will also affect, especially like the bubble tea. I don't know whether you have heard about that. It will affect your sleep quality. So it is the downstream consequence of some lifestyle factors instead of being lifestyle factors.
Okay, and when you would then further explain the relation between socioeconomic position and the lipids in the liver, what would you then include as other possible mediating variables when it is not sleep?
Sorry, could you please repeat?
So you say lifestyle variables is only part, sleep is not the solution, there is no relation, but what are your hypotheses about other factors mediating the relation between socioeconomic position and lipids in the liver?
Yeah, for the other factors, as I mentioned just now, I think there are also some factors associated with the personal traits, like the perceived control self-regulation, and also some external environmental factors like the air pollution and other some toxic materials you are exposed to. This may also be the mediators.
Okay, thank you. Another question is about the recommendations you do about what could be done with the study and how you could change lifestyle behaviors, maybe especially of people with low socioeconomic position. And you have several recommendations, like that you should take environmental measures, that it's more nicer to go for a walk or do some physical activity, policy measures, but also financial measures like subsidies to be physically active, and I totally agree with those. And these may also be very good for, especially for people with low socioeconomic position. But then you also suggest several individual measures. And what you say is that individuals should heighten their self-efficacy. They could set attainable and realistic goals, or they could seek help of health professionals. And I was really thinking about how you imagine to do that, because this is how would you really do that in practice, as especially people with low socioeconomic positions will maybe not be very eager to do that. Should they help by that? And that it is an individual, a measure directed at the individual, of course, does not mean that they should do it all by themselves. So I would like to have your ideas about that.
Yes, I totally agree with you that for some individuals with low socioeconomic position, they may not have such a strong willing to change their behaviors. But I think they can. I think measures can be targeted at the low socioeconomic community, and maybe the collaborations can be made with some of the trusted local leaders to promote all of the people to change their behaviors, because for the low socioeconomic group, they may have they may have trust in that local leaders. And so we can target that the education of such local leaders, and local leaders will then activate the low socioeconomic group to change their behaviors.
Okay, so do I understand correctly that you then maybe suggest that here indeed also at least governmental organizations or local policies are meant to do something so that communities get inspired by the local leaders?
Do you want to give a very short answer?
Yes. Yeah, just as I mentioned in my slide, that the government should take the lead.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Zhewen Ren, the time appointed for defending your thesis has passed. The degree committee will now withdraw to discuss the quality of your thesis and your defense. I request that you and your company await the results of our deliberations and our return into this room.
Thank you.
The PhD defense has now ended. The degree committee will debate the candidate's performance behind closed doors. This process usually takes about 10 minutes.
Long road to the south side, 10 miles in my rearview mirror. I know what it felt like. My goals only getting clearer. East side to the west side. No place like home. If it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and die. On the line, I know you know that I can't read your mind. Years can't fly by now, don't waste all your time. Cause I'll go the extra mile. Long road to the south side, 10 miles in my rearview mirror. I know what it felt like. My goals only getting clearer. East side to the west side. No place like home. If it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and die. On the dash, got my laces tied. Long road, I don't waste no time. Break rules because fate decides. With the team and we chase the light. I make a move, fall down, shake it off. I hate to lose, bad branch, break it off. No room for negativity, praise and love. Prepare for deep part cause we're taking off. Take the mileage, traveling so far from home. Gathering knowledge, other connections. I put the time in to get everything I ever hoped for. It's a challenge and we all in. Better future that we go for. And even though these nights seem long, I know that I am never on my own. Know you won the battle once you've grown. South side, 10 miles in my rearview mirror. I know what it felt like. My goals only getting clearer. East side to the west side. No place like home. If it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and die. Long road to the south side, 10 miles in my rearview mirror. I know what it felt like. My goals only getting clearer. East side to the west side. No place like home. If it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and die. can't fly by now, don't waste all your time. Cause I'll go the extra mile.
kunt wel plaatsnemen.
Zhewen Ren. The degree committee here present has assessed the quality of your thesis and your defense. In view of its positive verdict and taking into account your previous qualifications, the degree committee has decided to grant you the degree of doctor. Professor Brouwers is authorized to confer upon you this academic distinction in accordance with Dutch university custom. I invite your supervisor to now take the floor.
Do you promise to work in accordance with the principles of scientific integrity at all times, to be careful and honest, transparent, independent and responsibility?
Yes, I promise.
By the authority vested in us by law and in conformity with the decision of the committee here present, I hereby confer upon you, Zhewen Ren, the degree of doctor and grant you all rights attached by custom and law. As evidence of this, I now present you with the degree certificate signed by the rector, the secretary and the other members of the committee and affixed with the official seal of the university. So, Dr. Ren, I'm very happy and proud to be the first to congratulate you on your PhD. And in a laudatio, we often reflect on the period that led to this very special day. And in your case, that period started in September 24, 2021, because at that day, I received an email from you. At that time, you had a bachelor degree on public health and a master degree on epidemiology and biostatistics. You obtained that in China. And with a Chinese scholarship, you started a PhD project 1 year earlier in 2020 in another group. You wrote me in this email that you were not very happy with the current situation and you wanted to join my group. And, well, it took a little bit of time and completion of necessary paperwork, but you started with me in December 2021. We first decided to perform a study on socioeconomic positioning related to NAFLD in the Maastricht study, in line with your previous training. And while you started reading on this topic, we learned that a new study on the genetics of NAFLD was about to be published in Nature Genetics. We realized that this was a unique moment to use this new data to perform a Mendelian randomization study on the causal relationship between NAFLD and cardiovascular disease. We also realized that this was a highly competitive topic and that we needed to work hard to avoid what we call a scoop. Mendelian randomization was, however, a complete new methodology for you, and with help from colleague Pom Simons, a former PhD student, and your background on biostatistics, you started with great enthusiasm. And thanks to your hard work, we were able to complete the analysis and the manuscript within 3 months. That's quite an achievement. And that hard work that paid off with a publication in hepatology, well, as you probably all know, a renowned journal in the field of hepatology. And well, I checked it yesterday evening. The relevance of this paper can also be derived by the number of its citations. I don't know whether you checked it, but according to Google Scholar, it has already been cited 88 times. And that's quite special for such a relatively new paper. And your bioinformatics skills, eagerness, perseverance, and enthusiasm characterize the whole project. That paper on socioeconomic status was eventually published as well. And you managed to complete your thesis in 2 years and 8 months. And that's, well, a great performance. And what I particularly liked is to see you growing as an independent researcher. Quite shy in the beginning, but while the years were progressing, you became more and more self-confident, presenting your data at national and international symposia. But it was not only work. While you were in the Netherlands, you took the advantage to explore Europe with your friends, with your mother. You also went back to China several times, and I liked it very much because every time you came back, you surprised me with presents from China, and I'm greatly thankful for that. Currently, you're applying for a job in China, and that's what I learned, not necessarily hardcore science. And whatever position you obtain, I hope, and I guess I also believe, that this PhD has provided you a valuable scientific background and serves you for the rest of your career. Dear Zhewen, also on behalf of Anke, I would like to thank you for a very, very pleasant collaboration, and I wish you all the best in the future.
Thank you.
With that, I would give the word back to the pro-rector.
Thank you. Dear Dr. Ren, also on behalf of Maastricht University, I congratulate you with the degree you have acquired. It's always an important step in your academic career, and I wish you a lot of success in your future endeavors in academic surroundings or wherever the future brings you. I would also like to congratulate family, probably also mostly online, your friends and colleagues who supported you during this PhD trajectory. I'd like to congratulate the supervisors, and I'd like to thank the members of the degree committee for their work for this PhD defense, especially our guest from outside Maastricht, Dr. Cabezos Castro Cabezos, that's better, and Dr. Noordam. Thank you very much for being present here. Well, it's now time to forget about all the stress and enjoy the rest of the day, to relax. And with this, I close this academic ceremony. We make a photograph here with Dr. Castro on the back.
De